this on? Okay. I actually today just Googled 1 + 1 = 1, and the first thing that came up was this mathematician who said, I'm going to prove to you that 1 + 1 = 1. And I got partway down through it, and I said, I can't understand it, move on to something else. So that's where I was. We're going to begin with, Dooley, I didn't even know you were here. We're going to begin with good news. And additional good news. This is the good news. I got additional good news, okay? I want you to meet a new brother and sister in Christ. Brian, wait, stand up. You got to do it. That's how we do it around here. Kirsten, stand up. Father and daughter today. Welcome them to the Lord. Great. Glad to have you here. Now they're united, and we talked about oneness this morning. There's a united family in a way not experienced before. Let me tell you a quick story about that, though. It's funny and great at the same time. Somebody turned off the heater to the baptistry. That water was cold. I mean, jaw-cracking cold. It was bad. But it was a great thing that it was. Because as I took Brian down into the baptistry, I bounced his head off the back of the baptistry, and the cold water woke him up. I could have sent him right on to his maker right there. Now here's the rest of that story. After baptizing him, he turned around and baptized his own daughter. Isn't that great? What a great story. Great family. I love it. It was absolutely fantastic. All right. 1 + 1 = 1. Now, there are a lot of ways to illustrate it, but every one I could come up with had something to do with food. And it works really well. I thought about it today this way. Have you noticed that when a woman is pregnant and she has these really weird food cravings, nobody says anything about it. They just go, okay, that's just how it is. You know, give me a dill pickle and let me dip it in chocolate ice cream. I don't understand that, but, you know, yeah, that would have been my reaction right there. Somebody just lost it over there, Simeon, I'm sorry. But nobody cares, okay? But then people talk about other strange foods, and if it's not a pregnant woman, everybody goes, you're nuts. Because I don't even know how I did it, but one day, because I love mayonnaise. I'm a mayonnaise fan, okay? And for whatever reason, don't know why, I put mayonnaise on a graham cracker. Hey, you try it. I dare you. I dare you. Try it. It is outstanding. But see, every one of y'all looking at me. If I were pregnant, you'd be going, okay, no big deal. Of course, if I were pregnant, it'd be talking about something else, right? So, I understand. When I think about 1 + 1 = 1, yes, the math guy said it happens. We get the food combinations to illustrate it. But let's look at it, okay? David said, prove it. I'm going to prove it. Interesting, it's Psalms 1, verse 1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful. That man, there it is, that man, who is that? He's one with God, right there. Psalm 1, verse 1 makes a person one with God. The answer to this whole thing about how does 1 + 1 = 1, the end of the story is actually the beginning of the lesson. The only way that 1 + 1 = 1 in our family setting that we are talking, the way we're using it, the way that we're defining it, is that each person in the marriage and each one in the family individually be one with God. And when each one is one with the one God, that makes the entire arrangement one. Because we become one in God. And we notice this morning that oneness is created by God. And that makes sense because God is one. Even though He said, let us make man in our image, God is one. And that oneness resides in Him. Therefore, it's possible, not only possible, demanded that we be one. And so, the answer simply is when we each one decide to be one with God, then we are, in whatever setting, we're talking marriage, we're talking family, we're talking the church, we are one with God, then we are one. Jesus prayed for the church to be one. Ever how many there are, He wants them to be one. How are you going to do it? When each one is one with God. Spiritually speaking, that's how you do it. 1 + 1 = 1. But let's be a little more practical. If you haven't met Evan, our intern, be sure to meet him. Evan, I'm going to give you a lesson real quick. Here's one of your first lessons to learn this summer, okay? Here it is. Whatever you plan, whatever you ask, whoever participates, that's who you planned it for. So if you throw a party and 5 people come, you planned a party for 5 people. Because had you not planned the party, the 5 would not have come. So, let me illustrate that. I said this morning, any of you who can give me practical ways to become one, give me a text or shoot me an email. I got 3. Had I not asked, I would not even have gotten the 3. See how it works? Let me tell you the 3. The Earnhardt said, hang out. That's their suggestion to become one. Chet and Katie said, just hang out. You know, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I see a lot of couples that don't hang out together. They hang out, but they're hanging out with other people. How do you produce oneness if you don't hang out together? That's a great practical suggestion. I think we ought to take their advice, and every one of us who are married and all of us in our families, because we're dealing with both, hang out. Plan some time to hang out. That's embedded in some of the things that God has told us to, so I appreciate that. Lena Black texted me and she said, in purpose and in spirit, serve God together. It's exactly right. When 2 people, when a family, when a church, when a group, together in purpose and spirit decide to serve God, that creates a oneness. It really does. It does. Oh, but you have to hear from Mr. Titus. Oh, that romantic softy. Of all the people in the world, you are my number 1, he said to Lena. Oh, I see. She made it up as though you said it. No? You know, I had a suspicion that maybe you didn't, because had you said it, you would have said, and all the people in the world, you are my number 1 child bride. So, now those are 3 good, practical suggestions about being one. I want us to go in Scripture and let God give us some practical suggestions. Using the verses that we did this morning where God emphasized oneness, let's see if we can find some practical thoughts about how we can be one. I want to emphasize, before we do that we're talking not only about marriage and husbands and wives becoming one. That's extremely important. We know that. I'm also talking about families becoming one together, working together, being one in the sight of God. We're talking about church family as well, but our emphasis for these weeks is on physical family more than anything. So I want you to apply these not only to marriage, but also to family. I know there are a lot of people who are not married, some because they've not reached the age where they can, or they never have. But that doesn't make them less anything. That's just a different lifestyle. And so they can be one with God too, and they need to work on that with the family of the church. And our physical families work together for oneness. Here are some suggestions, okay? From God in His verses on oneness. We start in Genesis 1. Let us make man in our image and after our likeness. Let them have dominion. Let them have dominion. He goes on to say, I want them to have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the cattle and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. You know what I think God was saying there is a practicality to be one? Get busy and work together. Now that sounds almost like you don't need to say it, but I think we do need to say it. I think there are ways to understand it so that it produces a oneness. It obviously makes sense in the church, right? We become one when we work together in this place doing the work that we do. Certainly, that is true. Let's take, though, oneness working together, say, in a married couple. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but we have some husbands and wives who team teach in our Bible class program. I think that's an outstanding thing. Husband and wife teaching a Bible class together. You'll be studying together. You'll be praying together. You'll be preparing. And then you'll actually be in the class teaching it together. Don't you think that work together is valuable to produce oneness? I think it does. I think it really does. How about families that work together? You probably don't know this either. They don't want me to tell it, but I'm going to do it anyway. The Mackinnons as a family come up here every week and clean right here in this auditorium and in the lobby. Now, I will tell you this. You can sneak up on them if you want to. Because every one of them has something in their ears. And I've come in and they haven't even heard me a time. And I've wanted to sneak up on them and catch them. Haven't done it yet. I'm just warning them because I could. But now you think what that's doing for them, working as a family. I know God put deacons in charge of various works, but how in the world can those deacons do that work without their wives being involved? I don't know how. In fact, maybe that would be something that deacons ought to do more, is take advantage of their wives to be involved specifically in the work. I know that it's your job, deacon, to do something, but why not team up? You got a teammate right there. Jump right in. Let me suggest that all of us look at the works that are happening in this church. Why don't we take it on as a challenge as couples to work together and volunteer for certain things that need to be done? We often look for individuals. Let's look for couples. Or let's look for families that'll work together and do something. Oneness comes, I think, through working together. Let's do another one. Genesis 1, God also said, verse 27, and God made man in his own image and after his likeness, male and female, he made them. The second thing I think we do to create oneness, celebrate our differences. Celebrate our differences. Okay, I have to say it because everybody, so many people said it to me, I have to tell it just to remind you. Who did God make? Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. That's right. Celebrate our differences. You know, we find real oneness in the fact that we are different. That doesn't mean without the other we're not whole. It means that without the other one we're not as complete as we can be. Nobody has to be together with someone in order to be complete before God. Oh, but the intensity of it. But even bigger than that, in a church family, celebrate the differences. We live in a time when that's almost gone. Nobody wants to say, I am proud to be a man. I am proud to be a woman. I think it is great for us to have these differences. Should not the church lead in the concept of celebrating the differences that God made? And that produces oneness. Maybe a practical way to do that. In that team teaching thing, when the men can help those boys see what men are supposed to be, and the women help those girls see what women are supposed to be. I've often said that the hardest verse in the Bible is 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7. Where God said, husbands, dwell with your wives according to knowledge. I don't understand them. I don't get it. I've often said, too, that I think we fellows are pretty easy to understand. But I can't teach girls like a wife or a mother or a woman can. I can't, and she can't teach the boys like a man can in certain ways. We celebrate our differences, and when we put our differences together, there's a completeness that comes not only from being who we ought to be, but from understanding better who the other one is. I think we should understand well that our differences help make us one. That's interesting. The Godhead is three in one, and yet they're different. They are presented with having differences that contribute to the oneness. Number 3, Genesis 2. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife. Here's another way to create oneness. Get away by yourselves. Get away. Just out of curiosity, how many of our married couples here lived far enough away from both sides of parents that you actually had to plan ahead to go and see them, not just drive down the road? How many? Raise your hands. Yep. Don't you think there's some value in that? I think there's some value in getting away. That should not be interpreted as any statement about his in-laws. So, don't you think getting away is a good idea? We've said it many times. A young couple gets married and move far away, and we go, oh, that's good for them. They'll be able to, because they have to learn to do things on their own. This text says, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife. Get off on your own. Not just when you first get married, but get off on your own from time to time. I remember the very first time after Stephanie was born that we went out on a date by ourselves. And it was the worst experience. The only reason we did it was because one of the women at church told Rebecca, you have to go, and I will take care of Stephanie. And no cell phones back then. So we didn't know what we were missing, not being able to check every 5 seconds. But boy, she wanted to. And we finally had to just get on back. Couldn't stand to be away from her. It wasn't long till we were pawning them off on anybody who'd take them. But the first time, right? There's value in getting away. Families getting away. There is oneness to getting away. Number 4, to create oneness, God said, be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. We need to have, as married couples, healthy, intimate life. But we need to teach healthy, intimate life. Every child will tell you, not out loud, but in private, they'll tell you. You know, if mom and dad are in the kitchen hugging and kissing on each other and the kids come in, what do? Oh, quit that, stop that. But guess what? Down deep, you know what they're saying? Mom and dad love each other. That's stability. That's oneness. We need to create that in our family. We need to teach it. We need to make sure that our children are raised to have a healthy understanding of what married life intimately is all about. We may not have done well with that at times, but it creates oneness. That's what God said, so it has to be true. Here's number 5 from the passage in Malachi 2. When the prophet scolded the people of God and said, "You've broken covenant with the wife of your youth." And then he asked the question, why did he make them one? Because he wants godly offspring. The very next verse says, God hates divorce. Here's a oneness factor. When two people say, I'm in it, I'm there, I'm never leaving and you're never leaving. When parents say, when you go, don't come home because you can't come home. You married that one, you stay there. Oh, we need to teach that oneness comes from commitment, a decision. Stay there and don't leave. Oh, I know it happens. None of us has our heads in the sand. Divorce happens. We can't avoid it. And yet, we certainly don't need to teach it. We teach commitment. We teach stay there. The practical thing that comes from this is maybe you have a talk you've never had before, a talk about commitment. And you tell each other, I'm committed to you. I know you're committed to me. And there's a security there. If you've never really uttered those words in your marriage, if you've never uttered those words in your families, because I think that's just as true in families. Families, you're committed to each other. You stand up for each other. You work with each other. And when a family member decides, I'm going off on my own, and I'm leaving my family training behind, boy, it hurts, doesn't it? Man, let's teach the commitment level and talk about it often, because it does create oneness. 2 more in the final passage of Ephesians 5, where God talks about husbands and wives. He says to the wives, you submit to your own husbands. He says to husbands, love your wives like your own bodies. Here's what oneness is created through. Here it is. Take your oneness and give it to the other one. Take your oneness and give it to the other one. God made you. You are a husband. You are a wife. God made you as a whole, real, one being in His sight. You and I, each of us have responsibilities and strengths and weaknesses. We take our oneness, who we are, and give it to the other one. You know why? Number 1, God said do it. Number 2, it works. But number 3, that's what creates the oneness. I was talking to a young lady who, she and her fiance were talking to me. Neither one had been raised in the church, and I was just trying to help them. They came across this passage in Ephesians 5. And the young lady's nose just crinkled up, and her brow got, and she's, I don't like this. What? Wives submit to a husband? I just don't like this stuff. I said, well, fine. Let me ask you something. Read the next verse. And it talks about the husband who loves his wife like his own body and dies for her, just like Jesus died for the church. And then I said to her, let me ask you a question. If he'll do that for you, would it be easier for you to do that for him? She said, oh, I never thought about that. That sounds really good. I lost touch with them. I have no idea where they are. But I know this. God's way works. And when people see it, and when people experience it, now they get it. But see, I need to give my oneness to her, and she needs to give her oneness to me, because if she and I hold from each other, then I can't do what God wants me to do. I can't love her if she doesn't give herself to me. If she doesn't give herself to me, then she can't learn to be submissive. That's life. How in the world can we learn to be like God if we try to do things our own way? Practically, celebrate this idea. Work on the idea that we give our oneness to the other one. Finally, I love the last verse of Ephesians 5. I think it describes well who men and women are. And here is the way to be one. You be the one the other one needs. The first part of that, give your oneness, is about me doing what I'm supposed to do, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Now I'm talking about, what does this other one need? Notice the verse. Husbands, love your wives. And let the husband see, or let the wife see, that she respects her husband. Every time I'm in marriage premarital counseling, I always hit this verse, because here it is. It summarizes really well, generally speaking, the differences between men and women. Every woman wants to hear the words, I love you. They want to be loved. They want to feel loved. They want the security of love. And every man I've ever talked to wants to be respected. Sure, wives should love their husbands. Yes, that's right. But you know how God phrased it there was for a reason. Husbands, men want to be respected. And if a wife respects her husband, he understands that as love. So I need to be for the other one what the other one needs me to be, whatever that is. The way that works, practically speaking, it works in different ways in different families. It works in families too. Children represent all across the board in the spectrum. David McFadden told me this morning, standing outside, holding the newest one. The little boy, he said, if we'd had this one first, we'd have only one child. That's what he said. They have three, because they started at the other end, right? So the children represent everything. Well, in that family relationship, each one needs something because of who they are. We give ourselves to each other for what the others need. 1 + 1 = 1. And this is how we can do it. Hope it helps. I want to close with this idea. When life doesn't go the way God wants it to, or the way we want it to, and people and relationships and families are broken, let us create an environment for them that tries to help the best we can, to take into us and provide the oneness that now is gone because that family has been broken. No, God doesn't want families to be broken, but they are. And how we deal with them will go a very long way in determining whether they can be whole again. Let's think about that. Tonight, if you're ready to obey the gospel as these two did this morning, if you need to come to the Lord in any way, we're here for you. Let's stand and sing.